Anybody?
History.
Oh, okay. It's not trying to be, but it is. One of the things I think fundamentally is it's a handbook. How to and laws. Laws, do this, don't do that. Keeps us in this safe little boundary.
So it's like a manual.
The how-to book, the manual, the hand manual, the how-to book, is how to what? First two chapters, how to serve God. Let's start there. No sense going any further than that if you can't serve Him. You know, because it's all moot. We see that in the very first offering. Cain doesn't bring his best. He brought something. Did God say, okay, you were close, but your brother did a little bit better? No, the Bible says that He discounted the entire offering. If you don't bring your best, you might as well not bring anything, because that's how He sees it. It is. It's a history book. Now, world history? Is there anything in there about the Aborigines? Genghis Khan? Montezuma? No, so whose history?
Jesus.
Not bigger. Not so specific. Israel. Right. Israel. The book of Exodus is often referred to as the birth of a nation. It's their story. Okay? We're kind of grafted into the whole thing further down the line. But He always saw that. It was the plan from the beginning. He doesn't do things on the fly, not pertaining to the overall plan. Okay? Then, like Stephen said, yeah, it is. It's His story, referring to Jesus. Okay. And then when you start talking about Jesus, it's very specific in the Bible. It meticulously documents Jesus' genealogy. It has to do this. From Adam, we got to get over the flood. So Adam to Noah, and then we got to get over the flood, and then to Abraham, and then somehow we got to get to David. And then from David, we have to make sure that it's documented that there is a king line and a priest line. So we first see this character in Genesis. His name is Melchizedek. He's the king of Salem, or Salem, however you want to pronounce it. Okay? It later becomes Jerusalem. Okay? He's a king. Okay? He's never mentioned before, or he's only referenced after that. I mean, we don't know too much about him. In the New Testament, it says he didn't have earthly parents. Oh, that's interesting. He has no genealogy. And he just shows up in front of Abraham. Abraham immediately knows who he is. Okay? He's also a high priest. That never happens again. He's a king and a priest. No one else has that distinction until Jesus. So how is that going to happen in the natural? Well, when we get to David and then Solomon, there's a break in the two lines. And it's covered in the book of Matthew. Well, actually, I think it's covered in all the Gospels in different ways. The king line goes to Joseph. He was going to be a king. And I always wondered if he knew that, and I found out that he did. Now, he's a few generations away from when they stopped calling kings of Jerusalem because the Romans had taken over. But he knew he was going to be a king. And yet he's forever known in history as Joseph, the husband of Mary. He doesn't even have the top title in his own house. And Mary is Mary, the mother of Jesus. But guess what Joseph gets to do? Joseph gets to raise the King of Kings. So and he struggled with this. Because you know his friends were saying, hey, nice girlfriend you got there. Pretty good. She's what? Okay, well you better get this wedding, because everyone's going to be able to do the math. You got to get this thing moving. Boom, boom, boom. It's not yours, dude. You got to get it. It's whose? A ghost. This is a story that she told you, and you're buying this. Like I said, this book is full of crazy stories. Meanwhile, Mary's line comes out of the tribe of Levites. Her uncle was a high priest at the time, in his cycle as well. So Elizabeth's father. So one of those crazy. So when you look through the Bible, you got all these stories, and it's just like, okay, how does this fit in? It might not have anything to do with the lineage of Jesus. So you got the patriarchs. So after Noah, we're looking for the next main character, and that's Abraham. Abraham gets Isaac, Jacob, and then Jacob, 12 sons. The 11th one, we spend more time talking about him, Joseph, than we do Abraham. Why? The lineage to David doesn't go through Joseph, so why do we spend so much time with him? What are we told is the oldest book in the Bible? The oldest written documents. Job, all right? Have you ever seen where Job falls in the Old Testament? It's like halfway down. Job lived in the time of Abraham. Why is it so much further down the line? What purpose does it serve to be there? It's almost like the book of Genesis should have been broken in half. You have the creation and the flood, boom. And then you have the book of Job, and then you have the patriarchs. Chronologically, that's how it would work, but the Bible isn't chronological. It does this all throughout everything. And there's a reason for that. That's for another time. A lot of what I'm going to bring up is for another time, sorry.
Oh, wow.
It's to keep you coming back. It's a teaching technique. So we're going to be in 1 Samuel, chapters 4, 5, and 6. This actual story actually starts in 3 and goes to 7. Okay? But we're just going to concentrate on the middle part, and we're going to do certainly the abridged Reader's Digest version of this. Samuel, very important character. He's, in chapter 3, he's an acolyte. He's in service to Eli, who is the high priest and the judge of that time. And he's forgotten about God. He and his sons are doing things their own way now. And the history of Israel is they get it right, they're blessed by God, and then they forget. God doesn't necessarily do anything bad to them, but his protection is now removed and just things happen. Then they get it right, and they're blessed, and they just keep doing this all through the book, all through history. They're doing it now. Okay? They still don't believe that the Messiah was in their presence, so they're still wrong. That's why they have the God of Abraham, Isaac, and who? But that's not his name. He got a covenant name. Israel. They're not in covenant. So they follow the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. One day they will be the God, they won't serve the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel. They will get it right. But that's for another time.
Wow.
Samuel. So, in chapter 3, he doesn't know the Lord. He knows who God is, but he's not in a relationship. And one evening he's called. Arise and come forward. So he goes into the bedchambers of Eli. He goes, I'm here, master. And he goes, what? He goes, well, you called me. He goes, I didn't call you, boy. Go back to bed. So he goes. Again, Samuel, rise and come forward. Goes in there, he goes, here I am, master. He goes, would you just, I'm not calling you. Go. Third time, he sends him away, but Eli knows what's going on. All of a sudden, everything, he's like, uh-oh. God's gone around me. He used to talk with God. He had direction from God. That's why he's in that position. But he's forgotten about God. So God's like, okay, forget about you. Next. Boom. And it's Samuel. Kind of a nobody at the time. But doesn't he do that a lot? Right? Never think you're too small for God to use you, ever. People are going to do, in this country, around the world, people you've never heard of. Pastor Bill Wilson was an abandoned child, 9, 10 years old. Look what he's into. My goodness. You know, no one would have ever seen that. But that's how he works. Samuel is one of the few characters in the Bible who actually has a described birth. And actually it was a miraculous birth. His mother's womb was sealed up. God spoke to her. It opened, which is why she named him Samuel, for God hears. They did a lot of that. Now we just call kids whatever we want to call them. Some people still get the idea and will name them something that has some kind of a biblical substance to it. What else is he? He's going to play a key role. Okay, he will eventually become kind of the judge. He's transitional because something bad is about ready to happen. Okay, and he needs to get the nation from Eli to what the people, they didn't want kings at first, now they're going to want a king. And that's going to be, David's not ready, so God is going to select Saul. And Saul's going to have an opportunity to do things right, he just doesn't. Okay. He starts off maybe getting it mostly right, but then he messes up. Absolute power corrupts absolutely, that whole thing. Okay. So then he's got to act as also a transition between Saul and David. Okay. He's venerated by Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. So he's a hero to all of the major religions. And he's the first prophet to be called a seer. So there's seers, prophets, and seer prophets, and it's all a little bit different. That's for another time. So we get to chapter 4, and what's happened? The Israelites have been, since Joshua, for the most part, they're focused on one group of people and they're trying to get rid of them. So this is where the world says, well, your God commits genocide. Well, don't think that they're wrong, because they're not wrong. They are right, but you have to ask the question, why? And that goes into a topic that it takes months to cover. But they're also after pagan kingdoms as well. Okay. So, I mean, they've had great success. Jericho, whose walls could not be breached, came tumbling down. Ai, which was a massive city. The Gibeonites saw both of these battles and they just kind of gave up. They just came out and said, hey, we'll join you. What do you want to do? We'll do whatever you want. That's okay. We don't have to fight you. So they're chasing the Philistines around the country now. Okay. And somehow they lose. Totally shocked. 4,000. Boom. Laying on the field. They retreat back to camp and they are flipping out. They have no idea what to do. Now, what they would have done previously was call on God. They don't do that. They try to cut a corner here. They send for the Ark of the Covenant, which is in not just the temple, but the Holy of Holies, where it's supposed to be, and it's not supposed to be disturbed. There's proper ways to deal with the Ark. They just like, hey, we need to beat these guys, go get it. So they do. They bring it out to the battlefield. The Israelite army is just, they're cheering left and right. The Philistines are like, uh-oh, what just happened? And then they put 2 and 2 together and they go, they've brought that magical golden box. Because they know the invisible God, the God with no name. And what's so funny is throughout the Old Testament, all these pagan societies, they know the Hebrew God. And they fear him. Yet, they want their own God. it boggles the mind. Abraham was allowed to just he wasn't a king of anything, but he was able to go anywhere he wanted. And he just traveled. Bandits would not touch him. Oh no, stay away. Do not harm that guy, because he has somebody that watches after him, and you will live to regret it. So they get the ark. They bring it back. They go into battle. So not only is it in the temple, they take it into the battlefield. Now, you thought they lost bad the first time. The next time, they lose tens of thousands of men. Okay? This is not looking good. So the whole ark thing is the premise of Raiders of the Lost Ark. Okay? Great movie. They got some historical stuff correct. Most of it, like Hollywood, they mess it up. And here's the problem. Anytime Hollywood does something like that, the general community thinks that was the truth. If you want to see a really bad example of a Hollywood movie, watch that Noah nonsense with Russell Crowe. Oh my gosh. Ridley Scott was the director. He said he was born to make this movie. It's one of those things he had been waiting all his life to do. And I'm like, and that's what you came up with? Did you not even check with any scholars? Now, the ark that's in the movie is this one. That's not what it looked like. This is the most common representation. It didn't look like that either. If you go to Israel, now, what's the difference between that one and this one? The position of the stays, the rods. Because the way that they are in that top picture, you have 4 quarters. Where's the front of the ark pointing? Off to the side. But if you carry it this way, the front of the ark is forward. This is how it's supposed to be presented. And when you do have to move it, for whatever reason, there's a way to do it that's been given. It was in Exodus and then I think Numbers. Who can do it and how? So you have to have people carrying this. And like I said, there's instructions for this. And it always is in the front. Like I said, yeah. Exodus and then Numbers chapter 4. Only the Levites are allowed to mess with this, and only one single family in the Levite tribe is allowed to carry the ark anywhere. So you need, whoever that family is, and I think it's Kohath, you have to have a lot of sons, constantly, because the women aren't allowed to do this, right? Okay. I'm sorry, but so the Philistines heard that shout. They're like, oh man, wouldn't it be nice if we had this? And what do? And that's actually a real picture. They used it in the movie. It's in the Guggenheim Bible. 30,000 foot soldiers. This is devastating. It's like now the Philistines have the upper hand, and they know it. What happens next is one of the great strategic moves of all time. They chase the Israelites back to camp, and while they're licking their wounds that night, the Philistine army goes into the camp, finishes the job, takes the ark, and heads out. This is complete annihilation. The word gets back to Eli, and like being a good elder, he's sitting at the gates when he hears the news. Not only have they lost yet again, it's a massive loss. The 2 sons, who were the only 2 Levites left that were allowed to carry the ark, so they used 2 other random guys, they died as well, and the ark is stolen. So he's sitting at the gates, and he does one of those oy vey kind of things, falls backwards, lands on his head, breaks his neck, he's dead. This is utter devastation. It's like the Israelites are now floundering. Chapter 5, we go to the Philistine camp. They take the ark to Ashdod, which is their holy city. And they put it in the temple right next to their god, Dagon. And they're like, this is great. We're unbeatable now. Not only do we have the power of Dagon, we also have the power of this Hebrew god. We're good to go. They're feeling really good about themselves until the next morning. They go in, the priests go in to do whatever they do, and the statue is laying on his face. It fell over. Okay, well, circumstantial, but anyways, they're freaking out. They get him, they stand him up, clean him up, okay, they finish their duties and they leave for the night. Next morning they come back, he's down on the ground again. Only this time, he's all busted up. His legs are still standing there, but his body's over here, his hands are over this way, and his head's over there somewhere. You can't fix that. You can't hide that. So now they got to call in the high priest and the princes and say, look what happened. Meanwhile, what they don't know is in the kingdom, the men have started to become ill. Now, in chapter 3, and it wasn't a dream, God is speaking audibly to Samuel, rise, come forward. And Eli had said, hey, if he calls you again, you tell me every word he says. Because Eli realizes he's out of order and God's gone around him. What God tells Samuel is something bad, really bad, is about to happen. But watch what I'm going to do. That shows up a handful of times, that phrase in the Bible. Wouldn't that be awesome? I was hoping Regina was going to be here. I was going to use it as an example. Regina. It's the Lord. Rise and come forward. Oh, yes, Lord. Oh, Regina would be losing it. I know your husband Joe's a mess. But watch what I'm going to do. Thank you, Jesus. Thank you. Fix that man. Just, we picked on Dennis a couple weeks ago. Yeah. Joe's up. Bobby will be next, and then we'll do Chip, I guess. So they don't know what to do. The men are dying now. The disease that's going through the kingdom here is something that's plagued man forever. Okay? What's interesting is it's only striking the men. So this isn't natural. There's something else going on here. Remember what God said. Watch what I'm going to do. So what do? They like, you know what? Here's the plan. Let's send it to another town. Another one of our kingdoms. They've heard that the ark has been stolen, so let's let them celebrate in the victory. So they send it to Gath. Okay. Shows up in Gath, next thing you know, men start dying. Everyone's starting to get sick. Then they hear what's been happening. So they're not too happy with Ashdod. They send it to another kingdom. Same thing started happening. Now, the Philistine army is getting wiped out. And there's no battle. The Israelites don't even have to fight the war. And they're dying left and right. Now, there's a picture coming up that's a little rough. Okay, so what plague? Never mind. I was going to say, what disease has stricken mankind throughout history? Black Death, Black Plague, bubonic plague, whatever you want to call it.
Oh, wow.
Now, it's known for tumors. Okay, so in the book, it's going to say they were stricken with emerods, is the translation, in their private places. Both of those, I think, are mistranslations into English. Okay. One of the terms for emerods in the Hebrew is hemorrhoids. A lot of the theologians think that over time some letters got mixed up and it's not really that word, and it really should be just tumors. And then private places is just, your Bibles will say private or secret, is really hidden places. This disease in its pneumonic form starts in the chest and erodes through the lungs. So your hidden places are from your shoulders to your knees. And this disease starts in the trunk. And then it goes further down and then out the arms and out the legs. Now, a symptom of this could have been hemorrhoids, but nobody dies from hemorrhoids. Okay? They're not fun, but you don't wipe out, a whole race of people with hemorrhoids. I mean, he could do anything he wants, but it's more like this. And actually, another piece of evidence that's missing shows up later in chapter 6, and that's when the reference to mice and rats come into play. Because that's the host, I guess it's referred to as a vector. It's really the fleas, okay? Which is why covering up and burning the bodies doesn't stop the disease. But then no one realized it was the fleas that transferred the disease around. But anyways, there's your medical lesson for the week. And so they're in chapter 6. So what they do is the ark comes back to Ashdod. None of the other kingdoms want it, plus everyone's dying. So they send it back to where it came. And now the priests are like, okay, well, we don't want this. What are we going to do? So first thing they did is they made gold, they call it similitudes, honorariums, idols, I guess, of the two things that have stricken them, the tumors and the mice. And what they want to do is take those items with the ark and send it back to the Israelites. Now, how are they going to do that? Well, the priests come up with, it's not a stupid scheme, it's actually a genius scheme, but it's silly, it's fixed, it's rigged. So, there's your gold pieces. What they do is, they put the ark on a cart, and they bring in what the Bible calls milch kine. Okay? They're cows, but a milch kine is a mothering cow. Okay? Mama cow. Attach them to the ark or the cart. Now, ladies, what they've done is they've taken the mama cows from their newborn babies. If somebody takes you away from your newborn child, puts you in a room, and then opens the door, where are you going? All right. So, but this is the plan. So the priest put it this way: if we attach these mama cows to the cart that contains the ark and the similitudes, and we open up the door, if Dagon is stronger than the Hebrew God, he will force the ark out of the temple. If the Hebrew God is stronger, he will defy the order of Dagon and stay right where he's at. So this is rigged. They know as soon as they open up the doors, the cows are going to head out looking for their young, and the ark is going to go with them. So they do this to save face. They have to look good in front of the remaining people. So that's exactly what happens. They go out. But here's what surprises everybody. The cows don't stop there. They go into the courtyard, and then they head right to the front gate, and then just keep on going down the road. And the priest and the princes follow the cow and the ark, and it goes all the way to one of the Hebrew cities, Beth Shemesh, I think. And they're all happy. And so they're like, oh good. This worked out better than we even thought. We didn't have to drag it anywhere. We don't have to talk to them. They're happy. This is all good. Okay, now in chapter 7, things don't turn out so well for them, but we're not going there. So, uh-oh. What happened there? So the question, and Pastor Bill Wilson gave this to me as a lesson. He goes, study this, tell me what you come up with. And I'm like, okay, this is good. So the next time I saw him, he goes, what do you think? I didn't get it quite right. I came close, but I didn't know why. The question he posed to me was, and he said it this way, where's the real miracle? I would say this, where's the real lesson that we need to pull out of this story? Because this is an odd story, especially when I'm supposed to be referencing this. Where does the serve kind of thing come in? You know, you're talking about hemorrhoids and mama cows and 40,000 people dying in battle. I mean, what's going on here? So, where's the miracle, the lesson? Is it God's power over Dagon? The ark's power over the cities? God's power in general? Or something else? Is there, you know, what speaks to you here? When you read through the Bible, you have to think of it as, when you think of world history, every person, every country, and yet what we're supposed to be concerned with fits in these pages. So when you think of it that way, because world history should, I don't know how many of these buildings it would take to fill that up. I mean, it'd be countless, right? Yet we're supposed to be just concentrating on this. So the way Pastor Bill put it to me was, every single word in here has importance. You won't always see the message right away. You got to dig a little bit. So what's going on? What makes you question something? For me, it's always like the hair stands up on the back of my neck now. And I always say, well, why do I need to know that? Like Joseph, you know, the lineage doesn't go through him. In fact, why is he even considered a patriarch? He's in Egypt most of his life. He's not even back in home. So how does he get that elevation? What's going on there? And here you got God's power. Okay. That's everywhere. Is there something else that's just a little bit different? So I told Pastor Bill, I have a feeling it's the cows, but I don't know why. And he goes, that's good. He goes, and you do need to figure it out. He goes, because that's right. He goes, they're milch kine. Why didn't it just say cows? Milch kine are mothering cows. That's what's important here. Okay? They've been separated from their calf. They go out into the courtyard because they're just trying to get back to the cows, but they don't stop there. They walk right past their babies, right out the front gate, and make a beeline to the Israelites. And the way the Bible puts it is, they went straight away, and that doesn't mean in a straight line. They hurried. And then it says they neither went left or right. So there's your straight line. That was the urgency that they had. They're going straight back. They're taking the ark straight back home. And then there's another little nugget in there as well. It said they lowed all the way. Not move, because cows move all the time. But a lowing cow has a specific meaning to it. It only happens twice in the Bible. This is the first one, and the other one's a little bit later. Let's see if you can guess where that is. A cow that's lowing is under tremendous stress, either physically or emotionally. Everything in their, they function on instincts, and I really don't think it's quite that simple. We function on reason, right? If you were separated from your children, ladies, not only would you have the urgency to go, but you would also be thinking about, okay, how am I going to do this? Who do I need to take out? Because somebody's going down. Nobody's getting in my way. If they know what's good for them, they're going to move. Okay? Right. So you're reacting, and you're also kind of thinking things through. Cows don't. We're told animals don't do that. They have this natural thing in them, and they react a certain way. And yet these cows went right past their young and went straight down to the city of the Israelite camp. The ranchers, and I've seen this in documentaries and other TV shows, they refer to as cows as the dumbest creatures on the planet. I don't know if that's true, and we won't make fun of cows. Sorry, I skipped over. So this is obviously these cows are under stress, emotional stress. Okay? So this is the bad reaction. They also go low in extreme excitement. Now the Bible has a lot of symmetry to it. It's just really cool how things work out. When do you think cows are mentioned lowing with excitement? Yeah, look at that. Everybody's listening. All right. Very good. So here's the lesson. Why? I don't know what happened here. Pastor Mel messed something. Yeah. Here's the lesson. If one of God's lowliest creatures can be made to obey his will, what's holding you back? Why do we put the wall up? What is the wall? Is it you? Is it something else? Pastor Arnell mentioned before. It doesn't feel like it's the right time. Well, it's never going to feel absolutely perfect. And the enemy is going to make sure of that. Because they don't want you, he doesn't want, or actually they do not want you any closer to God than you are right now. No matter how close any of us are, one more step is something they don't want to have happen. Certainly 5 steps. Some of the younger Christians in here or yet to come. He doesn't want them coming here either. In fact, when those newbies come in here, we need to surround them with love and support right away, because they're going to come under attack really quick. I mean, I've seen this happen way too many times. When we did the first Activate class at the last church, I promise I would. Never mind. A couple of the people, Jennifer was in my class, a couple of the people came under attack so bad that they quit. Small victories. He doesn't care. Small victories. And then just to pester you. So what is it that holds you back? You know, it's going to be different for everybody, but it's going to be something. And you might think of it as something that's insurmountable, and it really isn't. Some of it might just be that it's out of your comfort zone. I've never done anything like that before. Well, I haven't done anything like this before. He hasn't started a church in the middle of a crisis before, you know? Dennis, he couldn't believe he was being told, break away from men and women with action. They're gonna be fine. I want you to start another one. With what? I don't got anything. $8,500 showed up almost like that. And projects. And they've been doing projects too. You know, they're going back to Louisiana. They're having some, is that where they are today? There's a ribbon cutting ceremony at the church they did in Winter Haven. Next week. Okay. Okay. Well, then we need to ask Dennis where he is. So that's it. That's food for thought. What's your block? What's the wall? How do you get rid of it? Get in the Word, deep. Get on your knees, because things are coming up. I mean, one of the primary goals of this church is to get into the community. And that's gonna be out of most people's comfort zone. And I'm gonna tell you right now, it's way out of mine. I don't mind hanging around for sidewalk ministry and watching and maybe throwing in a couple of pennies, but to actually lead that group, it's, I've seen Pastor Duran do it. He does a very good job at that. I've seen other people do it. Lewis Lee, who spoke into my life many years ago, and Donna's as well. He broke away from Pastor Mike's church in Baltimore, which is Pastor Anthony's brother-in-law, and primarily to go into the streets of Baltimore, of all cities. I mean, there's some bad areas in every city in the country, but Baltimore? And he said it was as clear as day. It's just like I'm speaking now. He heard that, and he's like, wow. And no matter how you deny it, and I always use Frankie Johnson as this, when God told her to go into the prison and speak to your people, meaning the black guys in prison, because nobody's helping these guys. They're not getting rehabilitated, they're not getting saved, they're actually learning to do their criminal life better, is what's happening. And he told her for years, when you say no to whatever you've asked him to show you, the plan doesn't change. 2 years later, when you ask him again, it's gonna be the same thing, because that's what he wants you to do, period. No option B. Now, finish option A, and maybe you'll get another one.